I'm gonna let you do that.
I was thinking about the SEO presentation when he went through the list of does everybody know this and does everybody know this? And I thought, man, that would be really awkward for me. Okay, does everybody know Jesus? A couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine from college contacted me and wanted to know more about the social media chaplain stuff that I do. And I'm not going to tell you anything about that. You can Google it, because I'm the only one. Or being whatever. But he said there's a little bit of, minor disagreement, something like that, among pastors at his church about how to draw the line between people work and using the internet. And I went ballistic, and then I started laughing, and then I went ballistic, and I started laughing. And it was during the laughing part that I wrote back to him. And I said, so do they have those same conversations about using pencils? Do they have those same conversations about using the building? Do they have those same conversations about telling stories in their sermons? Because all of those things, pencils, buildings, the internet, stories, end up being tools that we use to communicate. And I want to talk a little bit about story as a tool this afternoon. And I think there's some application to social media. We'll see whether I can make that. I'd like to start by saying stories leave tracks in hearts and minds. Stories leave tracks in hearts and minds. About 28 years ago, moved to Austin, lasted here for 3 years. It was too hot. Needed to go back north. While we were here, I was a grad student and my wife was working at the university. It snowed once. And the university closed early, as it always does when it snows a quarter of an inch. And Nance and I took off immediately for home. Part of it, I suppose, was because we figured we snowed in and we were newlyweds, but a bigger part of it was that, quite frankly, we don't trust Texans.
Good choice.
I grew up I was born in Minneapolis, and then I grew up in the Chicago area. And so for me, snow is like fun. And driving on it is fabulous. But I don't trust y'all. So I wanted to get home before any of the Texans started driving and sliding into stuff. What was nice and fun about driving first through this is I was able to leave tracks on the road. And what the tracks do in snow, the first person that drives along that way, what they do is they say, here's where the edges are, here's where to go, here's where the lines are, and you can follow these lines. And people going down that road in the future know that's where the line is. That's what stories do. Stories provide that kind of a line that says, here, follow this along, move this direction. And stories are marvelous that way. A really good story gives you the opportunity to tell the story and then say, and here's what it means, or here's what I mean. Now, stories don't always do that. Sometimes stories end up being about themselves. We had a pastor here in Austin named Pinky. I don't know what his real name was, but that's what he went by. And he was one of those guys who starts telling a story as part of an illustration for a sermon point, and then he keeps going. And we just smile and nod because we knew that what would happen about 5 or 10 minutes down the road is Pinky would realize that his story had absolutely nothing to do with the point he was trying to illustrate. And they go, oh, okay, and come back to that point. Story runs that risk. There are national storytelling conventions, so you can go to them and learn how to tell stories, and you can be really good at story. The problem is good stories aren't for the sake of themselves. They're to provide tracks. They're to get somewhere. And I was watching the Good Life video where they introduced the staff, and it's a marvelous video. But my favorite person in it is, I think it's Richard Brooks, who says, I don't really understand this. I'm just starting to learn how to use all of this technology so that I can get to what I'm really about. And that's what story's about, to get to what we're really about. Now, I probably ought to answer the question. If I were really good, I'd just leave this up here so that you have something to look at for the rest of the presentation. Jesus told stories, but Jesus ended up not telling nice stories. Stories that are the kind of stories that you sit around and listen to around the campfire and say, oh, that was such a nice story. What Jesus did is he took dynamite for the status quo and he wrapped it in narrative instead of rules. Let me give you an example. So some tax collectors and sinners were gathering around Jesus so that they could hear what he was saying. And the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were standing in the back muttering, this person welcomes sinners. In fact, he even eats with them. So Jesus told them a story. He said, suppose one of you had 100 sheep and lost one of them. That man would go looking for that sheep. And when he found it, he would pick it up and carry it home. And then he would set it down, presumably, although Jesus didn't say that. And he would invite all of the neighbors and say, celebrate with me. I found my lost sheep. Now, that's not really a Hallmark kind of story. At first glance, it's like, oh, isn't that sweet? He's going looking for the sheep. But all of you are good enough business people to know that a 1% loss is a pretty acceptable loss. That's just like the cost of doing business, right? Because you got 99% of them. And what I left out is what the shepherd did when he went to look for the one, is he left the 99 sitting out in the open field. So he risks everything for the sake of one. Which, from a business perspective, is really dumb. From an ROI perspective, it's like stupid. However, if you have sitting in front of you, I would have gestured this way, but that just like be dangerous. If you have sitting in front of you a bunch of people that you care deeply about, and you want to make it crystal clear to them that you give a rip about them, then you tell a story that's got really skewed ROI toward them. Now, what happened is Jesus is saying to the sinners and tax collectors, and it really is sinners, the notorious sinners. He says to the sinners in a non-trite way, you know what? I will be there for you. And he says to the Pharisees and the tax collectors, Pharisees and teachers of the law who are also listening to this conversation, go something that somebody else would say, yourself. And what his story did is it took the love and the compassion that he felt for one group and the extreme frustration that he felt for the other group. And that story wasn't a nice story. It was like dynamite to the status quo. It blew everything up. It said, I care more about these people than I care about these people. That's what stories do. And that's what social media does. It gives you the opportunity to make connections with people in very much one-on-one, very much high-touch ways. We think high-touch technology. Yeah, high-touch technology. You've heard some about video. You'll hear some more about video, I think. There's this really interesting thing called YouTube. And you can take a little camera and you can take movies of yourself. And then you can upload it to YouTube and you can mark it unlisted. You go, why would you ever want it unlisted? Because you want it to be viral, right? You want everybody to see it. No. When I wanted my friend Tim Walker to know how much I cared about him, the guy that lives here in Austin that I met for the first time face-to-face yesterday, I shot a YouTube video and sent just him the link. In that case, viral is one. Because the one person who most desperately wanted to know that I actually gave a rip about him could watch that video. What social media does is it takes technology that would allow millions of people to see and allows us to talk to just one. So the challenge for us is, who is the one that we actually give a rip about? Maya proved it this morning. She took technology that currently is helping Egypt sort some stuff out. She let us say happy birthday to her daughter. One of the things that has impressed me here is how much y'all have lives outside of real estate. I keep hearing these little conversations that are not about real estate. They're about family. They're about my kids at home who would like this sticker. That's a really cool thing. So how can you use this technology to connect with those one, those two? Because after all, you know what? It's just tools. And the preacher is done 20 seconds early.
Wow.